Hello, everyone, and welcome to Adobe Live and 2023. I have not been on here all year, so it is wonderful to be back. And I am joined by Alex Hogue, a professional video creator, editor, jack of all trades in all things video. So, Alex, welcome to the stream, and welcome everyone to the stream today.
Thanks, James. I'm absolutely pumped to be back and to be showing some new tips and tricks.
Awesome. Me too, man. I'm super stoked to see what you get into today. Before we actually get into the nitty gritty of all of your Premiere expertise, I just want to welcome everyone into the stream. Whether you're joining us from YouTube, Behance, wherever you're coming from, I just like to welcome everyone to our hour and a half here of Premiere tips and tricks. Hello, Sam, Rachel, Steve, Rob, Evan, kind of fanning out here a little bit. We got Evan Abrams in the chat, but we got a whole group of people here ready to ask questions and support you in all things Premiere today. So with that being said, I think we can maybe just dive in. Alex, why don't you give us a little introduction? I know you've been on the stream before, but let's just get a little intro into who you are and what you do professionally.
Yeah, so I am a adventure video editor, I guess and shooter, I guess is the way to put it. I've worked for all sorts of companies, all sorts of things, weddings. I used to work and do videos for national parks. I then went to GoPro, worked there for about 7 years on their team, making all sorts of videos for them. In May of 2020, I decided to branch out on my own and move up to Bend, Oregon, where I can enjoy all my favorite hobbies and also pursue my own video production business. So I've been doing that for the last 2+ years now. It's been going well. And yeah, I started out making BMX videos, kind of self-taught, and it's just evolved from there. So
right on, man. Well, I mean, your reel here that's playing definitely hits on all the things that you're clearly passionate about. And I think working at GoPro and just having that experience clearly shows in your work. And I'm sure others in the chat and watching this video are really excited to sort of see some of your other work and see you get into, how you create the work that you do.
yeah, so pulled up here. This is just my website, alexhogue.com. It has some of my work that I've done. Some of the videos I've worked on and clients I've worked for, Skydio. I've done stuff for Red Bull Rampage. I've kind of been all over. Definitely for a lot of different realms, for advertising, for social media. What we're going to focus on today is mostly just personal fun stuff. I also do photography, so feel free to check out some of that.
Looks awesome. Yeah.
And then yeah, go ahead and follow me on Instagram at AHHogue, which is my last name. But yeah, I guess that's about it. So
nice. Rob Magnell says that snowmobile shot gave him butterflies. I agree. I think just for looking at the work that you have, you clearly have a passion for the outdoors and for BMX and adventure sports, and I think it's really cool, and it comes through your work. I work with you on the Skydio side as well on some videos, so I know the amazing work you do. And again, like everyone, give Alex a follow on all things Instagram, website right now before we hop into it. And again, if you have any questions in the chat while we're here for Alex, I will be funneling those to you. Yeah, man, I think why don't we hop into Premiere and kick things off and let everyone know what we're going to be working on today.
Awesome. So here we are in Premiere. Just to give kind of a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today. The goal is to kind of focus on some basic entry-level Premiere techniques. The idea is to kind of show you tips and tricks for some of the most commonly asked Premiere questions, whether you're an experienced video editor coming from another program transitioning into Premiere, or whether you're kind of figuring this all out as a hobby for your first time. That's kind of the goal. And I want to talk about how to format for social media. So instead of having the traditional 16:9, we want to do 9:16 for Instagram Reels or whatever your platform is. I will also touch on some basic color correction, a couple audio tips, and then the biggest thing is I kind of want to just go over all the little tips and tricks that I wish somebody showed me 10 years ago when I first jumped into Adobe Premiere. So that can just be how to crop, how to scale things, how to keyframe things, speed changes, that sort of stuff. So I think that's what we're going to focus on today. And we'll be using, we're not going to go kind of start to finish on a full edit, but I am going to use just some of my FPV drone footage to showcase kind of examples, and then you guys can, feel free to take notes. I do want this to be a much more collaborative experience, so definitely if you have questions or if there's something that you want to know how to do, drop it in the chat. James will funnel it my way, and then hopefully we can get that addressed for you. So
right on.
Let's have some fun.
Let's do it. Yeah, how did you, I'm super jealous of anyone who can fly FPV. I haven't tried it myself. I've just been like the traditionalist, just drone user for years now. And I see these FPV shots, and I saw a couple of them on our test here before. And I'd love to know how you got into it, and if you feel like you like FPV more than traditional drone flying.
Yeah, it's a super fun hobby, but I also started doing it professionally as well, just on all sorts of different shoots. But the FPV world and the traditional drone world, I would say, are fairly different. FPV takes a lot of just muscle memory and skill and practice. You will crash. And I think the consumer side is like, Skydio, DJI, those different companies have products now that are so far developed from what they were even 5 years ago, that it's absolutely impressive what they can do with obstacle avoidance and tracking and all this sort of stuff. So FPV has none of that. So it almost brings back the kind of like the adrenaline rush of, it's like you're on a motorcycle or something, yeah, but all you're doing is sitting on a park bench flying a silly little drone around a park. Yeah, super fun. So
yeah, I feel like your adrenaline has just got to be going. Like my adrenaline goes even when I fly my regular drone, and if I was flying FPV, I feel like I'd have a heart attack. So more power to you, man.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and you're gonna crash it, and you got to fix them. But it kind of just becomes a black hole of a hobby, and then that evolves. Right. So
nice, very cool. All right, cool. Well, I'll let you get on here.
Cool. So feel free, if I'm skipping over something, just hop in there, let me know. We're going to be jumping around a little bit, so hopefully we can keep it somewhat streamlined though. Let's go ahead, and I guess the first thing somebody would be doing in Premiere, they're going to have a new project. So if you were to open Premiere, this is what it's going to look like. You're going to title your project whatever you want, save it wherever you're going to save it. So for now, we're going to delete this. I'm just using it as an example. But for me, I leave copy media, new bin, all this. I just leave it turned off, just hit create. And what's actually really cool with Premiere, you can have multiple projects open at the same time, which is really nice, because then you can actually, this here is from a project I already have open, but you can copy paste. And just something good to know. I'm not going to go into the nitty gritty there, but you can have multiple projects open at once. So
I feel like that's so helpful. Not to cut you off there, but for like what you do, especially when you get into like cutting reels and cutting, splash videos from footage of all over, it's more of a pain to just import all the footage than it is to just bring other project files in. So really, really helpful in the future.
So true. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It becomes insanely helpful, and also you're able to bring it into other programs, copy paste, that sort of stuff, which is just so nice and one of my favorite features of Adobe. So we have our new project here. As I mentioned, what we're going to be focusing on is building something in this vertical format, which is kind of the way you would digest it if it was on your phone on social media. So the first thing I'm going to do, actually, before we go any further, I'm going to go to Edit, Preferences, General. And if you haven't looked at any of this, there's a couple quick things I want to suggest and touch on. I'm not going to go into the weeds here, but the ones I do want to talk about are autosave. This will save you a lot of headache down the road if anything ever malfunctions or you lose power and you know your computer turns off, turn on autosave. Make sure this is checked. Usually every 15 minutes is good. Otherwise, you can make it shorter if you'd like. The other one I want to talk about is labels. For me, I am kind of a nerd when it comes to organizing things. So the default color names that are in here are sometimes a little confusing to me personally. So like cerulean, like I would call that maybe sky blue, and it'll
This
just
is
be
awesome.
easier.
I've never, I'm like you, I'm such a nerd when it comes to organizing, and I've never actually gone in here and customized them because I have the same thought every time I'm like going to a label. I'm like, what
I
color is this?
yeah, exactly. So just save yourself some headache. You know, if you get into it and video editing is what you want to do, come in here and maybe just rename the colors, and you can also change them and everything too to whatever works for you. So another little tip. Final little thing here, media cache. And I'm not going to go into details on what that is. I just want you to know that it's here. If you start, for some reason, if something weird is happening in your project, almost always the number one thing to try to do to fix that is to come into media cache, and this media cache files, just hit delete. So what that's going to do is clean it out, refresh it, and then Premiere is going to regenerate those. So a lot of times, if there's any weird things happening and you're like, why is this going on? You come in, do that, and it'll resolve some of that.
Yeah, that's a big point too. I feel like I used to do that on older laptops where I wasn't editing off of proxies, and I'm just like pulling my hair out, and then I'd remove all these cache files, and Premiere would somehow start working again. So really, really good tip.
Yeah. So, and the very last one, and this is just something I like to have on, is check this box: display out of sync indicators for unlinked clips. As you kind of move forward in Premiere, what this is going to do is it's going to put a little indicator if your audio and your video clips are out of sync. So that's just super good to have. That's all we really need to talk about in there. Let's go ahead, and this is our project bin here. Again, like I said, organization. So I would make a folder here. And to do that, I just came down here and clicked this little new bin button. You can also right click and go to new bin. To rename these, you can kind of double click right at the beginning here. You can also click and hit the enter button, which I find easier.
Hey, Alex, real quick, can you just hop back into the audio video sync shortcut? I think someone in the chat might have missed it and they were asking for it.
Yeah, so go into preferences. And here on the timeline, there's this display out of sync indicator for unlinked clips.
Perfect.
And to know what that does really quick, let me just show you a quick example. So this is my audio down here, video on top. Now everything's fine here. As soon as I take this audio and shift it over here, you're going to see this -2. And that's just telling me that this is out of sync. So we know that the audio is not matching the video. So that's what that checkbox does. Yeah, and that's just a nice little thing to have.
There's a lot of times where, and every editor has gone through this, where you're really in the zone and all of a sudden like a really important piece of audio gets unlinked and just way out of sync from your video clip, and you have to either Command Z a million times or quit without saving because you're like, I'm never getting this back, or I messed the whole thing up. So it is definitely really important.
So as we were saying here, I was kind of making some different bins here. I will keep this relatively simple since we're going to focus on maybe a pretty simple social media edit. So maybe you make a folder for your audio, that could be your music, a folder for your footage, and a folder for your RAWs, which would is just a fancy way, sequence. Footage here also can be called RAWs, and sequence is any timeline sequence that you make. So to make a new sequence, again, you can come down to this button in the lower right-hand corner. It's this little page tab button here. Click on that, go to sequence. And then it's going to bring up this new sequence window. You can also go to up in the top, sequence, new sequence. Here we can name our sequence, and maybe we'll call this FPV footage VO1 version 1. And there's some presets here. To me, those are a little complicated. What I would suggest is just coming into settings and doing your own custom one. You can leave this editing mode on DSLR, that's fine. Time base, that is the frames per second. And in most instances, I would say 2997 is a great starting point. You can use that. Now, the biggest difference for social media posts is this frame size here, the resolution aspect ratio. So traditional video is 16:9, so that's width by height. So 1920 pixels by 1080 pixels. Anytime you're posting to Instagram now, they've changed it a few times, but current standards are now basically the inverse of this. So we're going to do 1080 by 1920. So now it's 9:16. So that's going to give us that tall vertical setting for our timeline. Everything else here should be fine.
It's crazy how normal that aspect ratio has become in the last couple of years. I remember just, and I'm sure you felt the same way, like being so reluctant to transition to a 9:16 format because it's so unnatural, as you know, standard video creators always shooting in landscape. And I guess a question I have for you is, you shooting so much content for social media, are you shooting everything natively as vertical format, or are you still maintaining the 16:9 clip and shooting it landscape and then just cropping it that way?
Oh boy, that's the never-ending debate question.
I figured I'd open it up for the masses.
Yeah, that's a can of worms there. So I would love to hear what everyone in the chat prefers to do, and also just, you know, what is your purpose for the video that you're shooting? I think that's the ultimate question that you're going to be asking yourself. In today's example, this FPV footage, it was purely for fun, and I knew I wasn't going to do anything else with it other than maybe a social media fun little clip. But you know, it is a toss-up sometimes, because sometimes I do want to have, sometimes I get a really cool clip. I'm like, man, I really wish I shot that in the traditional aspect ratio for other videos or stock footage or something like that. But in a lot of instances now, just so I can, and we'll talk about this a little bit, just so I can get the most out of the frame and what's captured, I am rotating the camera and I'm shooting that vertical format.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it depends on the project, I think, is really the good answer there.
Yeah, that's a good point. I've had clients in the past specifically ask for gimbal footage shot vertically, in which case you have to start to like rewire your thinking. But you're totally right. It just really depends on the project and depends on sort of the preference of how you see yourself editing that footage.
Yeah, and it's becoming more and more normal to shoot on an iPhone in that vertical format, even with big clients such as, you know, like Red Bull. I was out at Red Bull Formation, which is a mountain biking event, and there's literally people out there dedicated to shooting the footage vertically, which I had never seen that up until now. And it's like, no, we don't want it. We don't want it this way. We want it vertical.
Right.
So times are changing. So
they are changing.
We have our sequence here. And at this point, this should get you kind of to where I'm at in this other project. So I'm going to switch over to show some examples here.
I have one like just weird nitpicky question for you, because I've bounced back and forth between all caps organizing and not all caps. Yeah. And is there a reason why you organize your bins in all caps, or is that just sort of a preference?
I think it started a long time ago. I used to work at TGR, and at the time I was an intern there, and just we dealt with a ton of footage, and yeah, I don't know. I think I picked it up from there. So it drives me nuts if it's not all caps now, or at least for like the main folders. So I definitely utilize all caps.
For sure.
Don't know why. All right, so where are we at here? So we talked about how to make the new sequence. So this is, okay, so at the bottom here, these are all different sequences that I have open currently. Try not to let that overwhelm you. But what we were talking about in with the sequence resolution and aspect ratio, most video you shoot is in 4K at 3840 by 2160 in that traditional aspect ratio, or it's in 1920 by 1080, which is probably still the most common, I would say, that same aspect ratio. And then what Instagram and these social platforms now post to is favoring the cell phone, which is this vertical 1080 by 1920. So these are kind of, I would say, maybe the three most common resolutions you're going to see today. And what this does, you can see here, if you were to shoot in 1080 by 1920 and you want to frame it for vertical full screen, you're going to have to crop this footage in, scale it in, which is going to result in cropping it. So you need to get this blue line all the way up here. And the only way to do that is to really scale it quite a bit, and you're going to lose information on both sides. So this kind of goes back to James's question of, hey, do you shoot it vertical or do you shoot it HD?
Yeah, this is a really, really great just visual way to see this. Even for someone who does this every day, it's a good reminder of making sure that you have all that information. And there's really no excuse now, even if you're using a cell phone, like iPhones and Androids can shoot 4K video. So it's just a matter of file storage, but I think everything should be shot in that way if you intend to crop it in for social media, or you're just shooting it natively vertically.
Exactly. So hopefully that makes sense. So we have our sequence here, and I'm just going to show you, we're going to play through an edit of mine. This is something I just posted to my social media channel. And my goal here is to kind of talk about different things, but my goal is to kind of talk about the different techniques I used in this video. So we do some time remapping, we do some color correction, some color shifts, tossing in sound effects. So I'm going to play this through, and unfortunately, we're going to play it without the music just for legal purposes, but I think you'll get a sense of what it feels like. And this is kind of our goal. So I want to show you how to do this time remapping. We'll see different things here. So I'll just full screen this.
Sweet.
So we hear a little bit of the sound effects in there, kind of flying through. Got some little glitchy transition. And then we got some time remapping. We're slowing down, speeding up. And then we got some kind of color transitioning that's happening here. So it's a this edit didn't take me terribly long. So I'm hoping to kind of show you this. And, you know, I think it was literally only from 2 flights with my drone. So I just grabbed a couple clips, and I kind of just want to walk you through the process of this.
Sweet. Well, it looks sick. And I feel like it's actually kind of cool listening to it without the music, because you get a sense for just obviously the different kind of sound effects and the sound design you chose. And
yeah, I agree. 100%.
That's cool.
Yeah, and if anyone wants to see what it sounds like, the finished thing, it's on my Instagram, so just go watch it there. But let's dive in. So we have our sequence here. Let's just focus on this one. And I guess the first step here is going to be to, let's see, sorry, 1 second. So the first step, I think we want to discuss some of the different buttons in here. So the biggest thing that I kind of ran into was all these little hidden buttons and different windows. So for anyone that is working in Premiere in the latest version, if your windows don't look exactly like this, that's totally okay. This is the newest version though, so it is possible to match this setup. The easiest thing is I have my own custom setup, but you can select what different layouts you want here for different things.
Can you show us, Alex, just how to create that custom setup? Because that's a really helpful tip, I think, especially for editing vertical video.
Yeah, so I would say, and the custom setup is literally just whatever windows you want open. So you can come up here to Windows. Let's say maybe I want Lumetri scopes, and I want that to be kind of here. So within Premiere, all of these are different clickable windows, and they all have their own little bunch of settings. And you can kind of set it up however you want, move things around, and then you would just come up to Window, and where is it? Workspace, and you can either save changes to this workspace or save as a new workspace, and then call this whatever you want, or maybe there's a different custom way you like to have particular windows, that sort of stuff. But that's how you create your own personal workspaces. And then there's kind of the generic built-in ones that Adobe provides for you as well. And it's also really common, especially when you're starting out. Let's say, 1 second, we'll just close that. So let's say this program window, it got closed, and I'm like, where's my footage? I don't understand, like, what just happened. There's 2 ways you can go about that. I would say the easiest is just to come up here to a workspace, and you can reset to the saved layout, and that'll put it back to where you were before.
Awesome.
Also, come up to Window and just make sure that program window or whatever it was, make sure it's checked, because you can close these different windows.
Yeah, I mean, just being able to customize this, and again, this all comes with time and whatever works for every editor. I find that I end up saving these layouts specifically for the vertical video that you're going to be working on today, just because if I'm sitting at my laptop and I'm like hunched over trying to zoom into vertical video, there's way better ways to lay that out so I can actually see what I'm working on.
Maybe this is your setup for vertical video.
Yeah, you want to pretty see it similar.
Bigger, so it's kind of whatever works for you.
Right on.
Okay, let's go ahead and dive in and so there's a couple different things we'll talk about. We'll get into here on the techniques we're using, but I think step number 1 is going to be to talk about some hotkeys and tools really quick. So if I actually come over here and
look at you, man, that's solid.
I made this for you guys because these, there's a million hotkeys you can learn for this program. These are kind of my go-to ones that I definitely recommend everyone learn, because it'll just make you faster and save you time. So feel free, pause this video, take a screenshot, use this yourself. Yeah, it's super helpful. So obviously you got the basic ones that every video editor will just have ingrained, and it's the same with a lot of programs. These all work kind of the same as they would anywhere else, but Control Save, as you edit video more, you're really going to be like pushing that without even thinking, like maybe every few minutes. Control Z, that's going to undo. I'll let you guys look at the other ones. Paste attributes, we'll talk about that one later. That's a common one I use. And then we're going to talk about the tools. So these are the actual editing tools that are over here for my window. These are just kind of the hotkeys, so you can change between them. So I hit P, that's going to be my pen tool. V is going to be my selection tool. So you don't need to know these in order to edit, but they're definitely great little tips. And I will kind of be using these throughout our day today. So feel free to learn those.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm going to just reiterate it again. You did mention pausing the video at this point. I honestly think that's so helpful for anyone just getting started, from a very preliminary Premiere standpoint. If you're coming over from Final Cut or another program, iMovie, I don't know where else you'd be transitioning from to Premiere, but it's just helpful to know some of these hotkeys. And there's so many more that are just like ingrained in my head. My thumb finger combo of the Command Save, I think I must do it 1,000 times every project. So it just becomes a part of your habit and a part of your routine as an editor.
All right, so let's talk about these different tools. I feel like a lot of times they are kind of overlooked in things you can make quicker. But let's say this is our new sequence here. that we made, you know, that I showed you how to make, that kind of vertical sequence. This is your program window. That's whatever you're doing on the timeline. And so here's your clips. Let's say these are our snowy tree clips, and I can just drag and drop them in here. And let's check this out really quick. So if I scrub through here, this is all of our footage here. Oh, what happened to this one? So this one, I think this one was accidentally, I started the clip when the camera was rotated the other way. So you might have mixed footage in your Premiere project. Maybe some's coming from a cell phone, something's coming from a photo you took, or lots of different things. So I think the biggest thing we want to talk about is, okay, now how do I get this rotated, get it, you know, scaled in so I can actually see it? So, and then this one is fine. Although, sorry, let's come back to this clip here. We're going to focus on this one right here. So this yellow clip, we got, if we click on here, it's going to bring up your effects controls window. If you don't have that for whatever reason, just again, go to window and effects controls and make sure that's checked. So this is our motion tab. This is where we have everything for position, scale, rotation, that sort of stuff. What's going on here is the actual clip was shot horizontal. So what we're going to need to do is rotate that. So if you want to rotate your video, we're going to do, let's try 90. Nope, negative 90. So we're rotating at 90 degrees. Now what else is going on here though? It's actually super scaled in. And that's because, again, if we come back here, we're looking at footage. The sequence is set to this green resolution, but the footage is actually a lot bigger because it was shot in 4K. So we're going to need to actually scale this down. And all I'm doing is clicking and dragging here, and you can scale it. You don't want these black bars. So ideally, if it's, you know, a perfect match, it would be 50. I did some other processing on this, so it's not an exact match. But 65, we don't see any black bars. Looks good. And what's happening here is I actually have a little bit of wiggle room. Let's see. So you can see here, my actual clip is up here. It's not going to let me do that. So you can see, hopefully you guys can see that.
I feel like there needs to be one thing that that's always driven me crazy about Premiere. And Alex, maybe you can clarify this. When zooming into that frame rather than having to click out of it, I'm so used to, you know, like in After Effects, a command plus or minus or option plus or minus. Is there a way to do that as a hotkey, or do you just have to manually go into that like fit for window or a percentage?
So what I typically tell people, if you just right click on here, so I'll do it with these ones. And again, this one will be a little bit different because the aspect ratio is off. If you right click on here, you'll see scale to frame size and set to frame size. I don't ever use scale to frame size. The one you're going to want to use is set to frame size. And the reason for that, watch what happens up here to the scale. So it automatically adjusts it there. And what it's doing is setting basically that height. It's either the height or the width, whichever comes first. Now, this was processed through Real Steady, which is a GoPro thing. So the aspect ratio, it automatically cropped a bit. So in my case here, that doesn't work perfectly, but this way I can see the whole frame, and that will work in most instances. Gotcha. So that's kind of the quick way, and you could actually do all of them at once. So you could just boom, right click, set to frame size, and now these all should be matched.
Sweet.
Now, if that didn't work, what I would do, again, if I didn't want to see these bars, which is in most cases, I would scale this up just a little bit, 66. And what you can do is right click again, go to copy. Also, Control C or Command C works. And then you can come to these clips here and then paste attributes. And you can use this for all sorts of things. And it brings up this paste attributes. Motion is going to be anything within this motion category. So position, scale, rotation. opacity. You can do it for effects that are on the clip, so you can just copy from one clip to the other. And the hotkey for that as well is the same as paste. So it's Control V, but with Alt as a modifier, Control Alt V, and that brings up the same thing here.
Awesome. Yeah, really, that's a hotkey that normally you wouldn't really think about, but I feel like I use that a lot for like specifically color correction. If I'm color grading, you know, a sequence that has everything that's pretty consistent, and I don't want to have to go like clip by clip or just put it on the source file, and I'll do it that way. So yeah, definitely study that hotkey because that's an important one.
So then now we have it scaled. Actually, let's see here. The other thing that people ask a lot about, so let's say it is zoomed in more. And actually, I'm going to go to another clip just to show this a little differently. So this is a 4K clip in a regular timeline. Let's go ahead and make this timeline. To find this timeline, by the way, this sequence, I just, you can do reveal in Explorer or reveal in project. It'll show you the clip name, but you can also come up here, reveal sequence in project. So if you are in a timeline like this, maybe it was by accident or you decide to change it down the road, you can change this resolution. So this is that 16:9. Let's say we wanted this for social media. Right click on here. I'm into, where is it? Sequence settings. And that brings up our initial window that we saw at the very beginning. And I'm just going to change this 1080 by 1920. So this is what the video is going to be built off of. Basically, it's like the canvas, so to speak. That's okay. So this clip was a 4K clip. So we're going to scale this up. And this is really common for social media. So this is just a clip of my friend riding a dirt bike. But this clip as it is here, you can see we have a lot of extra space here, and that's going to happen a lot with social media, especially if you shot in a bigger format. So what you're going to need to do is kind of reposition it. So you can use these keys up here, which I do like to use if it's just side to side motion. The other thing, if I'm selected on this clip, in a lot of programs, you'll expect to just click and drag here, but that doesn't work. And this drives people nuts when they're first learning Premiere. The way to get around that, hit this motion button here, and then you get this wireframe that pops up. And now I can click and drag and reframe as I need to.
That is certainly something that I'd like Premiere to fix, because it's such an easy thing that you would just intuitively imagine clicking on it. But those bounding boxes drive you crazy if you don't see them.
Absolutely. So this is my clip I'm going to focus on. Let's say we wanted to reframe our shot, because, you know, that's okay. It's not bad, but I think we could make it better since we have that side to side. So this is a technique that you're going to use all the time in video editing, and it's just called keyframing, setting keyframes. That's what these little stopwatches are. So if you come to the start of your clip, and you could hit that up arrow to take you right to the start, just the up arrow on your keyboard, so long as this is selected. Up, down will go through each clip. So we're going to start right here and position. We're going to move it to this side, right where she's entering frame. And I'm going to hit this stopwatch here. And what that does, and I'll scoot it over just so you can see it, it makes this little diamond here. And so now we move the image over there, but now she's out of frame. So I always say less is more when it comes to keyframes. If you can get away with just having a first and an end, then that's the way to do it. But obviously there might be some movement that needs to happen between there. So maybe I go to the end of my clip, and let's see. Let's bring this out a little further. So the end of the clips really will go all the way. Because she rides out of frame, so. And there you can see her exiting frame. So what I'm doing here is setting these keyframes for the position, and that's basically animating the position of the video. So it's not quite there yet. So maybe we have our start frame set, and then we're going to come forward. She's out of frame here. And as soon as I move this, you see it generates its own little keyframe. We're just going to slide this over. Let's put her more in frame. So now it's tracking with her to keep it in frame for that, you know, social media 9:16 format. And then maybe she's out of frame a bit here, so it needs to hold. So that's just a really quick rundown of keyframes, and you can do that with everything, all these settings here. So maybe if you wanted it to fade in and you're doing it manually, you set the opacity to 0. And again, it's just that stopwatch. So that's kind of the concept of it.
I have just a quick question, and I'll ask it for anyone in the chat who's curious about this. But in terms of keyframing something like this, would you ever use? I know there's an effect like the auto keyframe or auto reframe effect,
Yep.
or would you just like manually go frame by frame? Because sometimes I've noticed there's some jitter that ends up happening if you either don't like smooth it. So could you just kind of take us through that?
Yeah. So I'm showing you the way to manually do it right now. I'm also going to show you an effect that's built in, but I just kind of wanted you to know the fundamentals of what's happening. That's the basic idea of what's happening. If you wanted to smooth it out, you can change these to Bezier or like ease in, ease out. This probably isn't the best example to show it on, but we can definitely get into that. It's a little bit more advanced, but you can ease out of something or smooth this out. The easiest way is you could just come in here and maybe try auto Bezier, which I think that works for a lot of things. It's a little tricky to say how smooth it'll work on positioning. In this case, it worked pretty well. So that's the manual way of doing this. There is another way, but wait, there's more.
There's always more.
If we go into our effects here, and this is, I feel like it's relatively new, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like a couple, I feel like it's a couple versions ago that they introduced
Yeah, I
this.
think last year or two maybe. So auto reframe, and this is going to be great for you guys. So to keep it simple, most of the time it works 70% of the time. It does a pretty good job sometimes. So it's so I think this is where it's a little tricky. Oh, maybe because we need to hit analyze. Let's try that. So go into that effects. Basically it's all drag and drop. Let's see here.
Yeah, and on a lot of clips that,
there we go.
You know, that seems to work pretty well.
So that's actually working pretty good, and you can customize this a bit. That makes it much easier. It's drag and drop. I think for a lot of people, that's going to be your starting point. Maybe try that and see if it works. It may not work for every single clip based on what you want, but I think it's a great option to have, and it can save a lot of time and frustration of, you know, clicking these little diamonds and everything.
Yeah, definitely.
So again, that is the auto reframe within effects, the effects tab. If you don't have that, window effects.
Sweet. Yeah, and I think another thing, you know, you sort of mentioned this just being the manual way to keyframe, and a more like basic version of just kind of on one x-axis. I think sometimes you end up getting a little bit of that jitter if you have to reframe the y-axis and the x-axis, and it takes a little bit more finessing. So to start, I think this is a really good example.
Yeah, 100% agree. And yeah, thanks for bringing that up too. It's definitely something I wanted to talk on. So, okay, now we know how to kind of reframe our shot. We can scale it. Let's just go ahead and take that off right now. You know, these buttons up here, you can click this, you can move your shot around, you can scale, we can change rotation, all this sort of stuff. I wouldn't really worry about anchor point for now. Let's go ahead and move on. So if I have a bunch of footage, the first thing I like to do is kind of go through, I string it all out onto one sequence personally, and there's a lot of different ways to do this. I will grab, let's say these are all my clips that I have for my video that I want to make. And I'm going to go through and I'm just going to scrub. And let's say, oh, this is kind of cool where I pass through these trees here. So I'm going to do with these selected, if you hit Command or Control K, okay, maybe let's not do that for right now. So let's show you the different tools here. So what I like to do is essentially I like to bump up to the next level the best clips that I want to use and get rid of all this garbage of setup and that sort of stuff, just to narrow down my footage more. So over here, I have my tools on my toolbar. This might be on the right side, depending on where you have it set up. But the most common ones, razor tool, you've probably experienced that before, the cut tool. All that is, you know, you cut the clip and that'll cut audio and video if you have them both selected here. And then we have this, and then I'm just going to move this up. So like, let's say that was one of my better clips. I'm just using this as an example. And then you're going to go through, and I basically, long story short, not to spend a ton of time on this, I like to go through, select all my best clips, move them up a layer. And then what I'll do, let's just grab a few more, the best ones. So a lot of times what I'll do is I'll scoot this down. If you click and drag, delete in between here. That if you have less stuff to look at, if you find your best stuff, and it'll save you a lot of time in the long run. Yeah. And that is also the basics of, you know, the razor tool is kind of literally it's your scissors for the program. Yeah, I feel like this is always, once you're ready to get going, selects, you know, string outs, whatever you want to call it. Every editor sort of has their own process, and I love being able to see into, you know, other professionals' process, because I have my own workflow, and it's really cool to just see there's a million other ways that you can go about doing the same exact thing. And I think that's what's so cool about being an editor and working in a program like Premiere here. All right, so let's bring one of these clips down as an example. And I just want to show you some of the other. This is pretty obnoxious drone sound. So what I'm doing here, this is actually another good thing to talk about. So if you want to just lower the volume on a clip altogether, there is this line here, and you can just click and drag it. 0 is the default. And you'll also see this is up in your effects controls under audio. It's just adjusting right here. So that's just another way to, you know, if you need to turn down the audio, this is how you're going to do it. If you were going to, let's say you, you know, started to cut this specific string out, and rather than clip or hit each audio clip and pull that audio down, is there a way to adjust sort of like the master of that track, that audio track, to pull down the audio? Yeah, and this is something I hesitate to tell newer people. I personally don't use it all that much. But if you wanted to, let's say this, here, hold on one second. I guess we could do it here. So the way to do that is you come up to Window, and you're going to go to Audio Track Mixer. And we want it for the winter snow. That's the sequence it's open. So that's going to bring up these different tracks here. And these tracks here, which are labeled at the bottom, A1, Audio 2, Audio 3, Audio 4, those are just the different audio tracks in my project. So Audio 1, Audio 2, Audio 3. Instead of doing it clip by clip, let's say we left this at 0. We can hear that pretty loud. I'm not going to turn down the clip, but I'm going to turn down everything that's on this track. And if I just drag this down, I can control that whole track. So the best way to show that, it's getting quieter, but that's affecting everything on this whole track. Right. Now, if I were to bring this back down here, it's back up because the volume is only here. And another way to see that, if you get into editing stuff, is you can right click and go to channel volume, I believe it is. No, there's a way to show this. I forget. Yeah, I kind of forget how that goes too. I don't remember it right off the top of my head, but there is Not helpful, right? There is a way to show, maybe it's, well, we don't need to get into that for today. It's a bit more advanced stuff, but just know there is a way, if you get into track mixing and more audio work, there is a way to show, and I think that might be it, just the channel volume. You click on this little tab down here and it'll show you any keyframes or volume changes you have on this audio channel.
Cool. Yeah, and not to confuse anyone in the chat, that's really just the, you know, like you said, the basics of doing that would be if you had multiple, you know, cut audio tracks on that one track, and you just wanted to sort of imagine it being like a blanket, like mix and taking that volume level down as a whole. But in this case, we're just talking about just how to actually adjust it on the clip itself.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest use case for that is if you have a music track that you've edited and maybe you're splicing it up a bit, then you can just apply it to the whole music track.
Right.
As opposed to each individual, you know, cut, this is my music here. So let's go through and talk about these tools a little bit more. The most used ones, which I do have on this kind of hot sheet here, these are what I use the most: the selection tool, the blade tool, the pen tool, slip tool, track tool, that sort of stuff. Let's talk about what those do, because I feel like there's a lot of people that work in this program and don't utilize them. So let's just go ahead and, so here's my clip here. If I come to, gosh, I use the hotkeys, so I don't even know the names for them. So I'm hitting Y, the Y button right now. This is the slip tool, and I use this all the time. And what that does, I can click and drag, and what it's doing is changing this beginning and end point. And actually, the best way to show that, maybe we have some other clips here. And let's just use this one. We're gonna have let's say we had a clip before and a clip after. One way to do it is you could drag this to the end, slide it over, then drag this if you wanted to change the start point on this clip. The other way is hit that Y tool, which is that slip tool, and now you guys probably can't see here, it's pretty small, but it'll show you the start and end frames. So let's say I want to drag this and I want it right as it's maybe passing this tree, and that I want to be my start. So it's a great quicker alternative, I guess is the word to use.
Yeah, and I think it's really helpful.
Clips.
I think it's really helpful to use. Yeah, exactly. To use it on the timeline when there's multiple clips and layered on top of each other helps, so that you're not having to like move a clip up to a higher timeline, drag it out, bring it back down. It's just another step to continue making your life a little bit easier on just one track.
Exactly. Yeah. So if here's the edit, for example, if I'm here and let's say there's this tree up here, I want it to start there, but I don't want to drag and find where that is and then move the whole thing back over. Again, just use the Y tool, the slip tool right here. And then I can just, which is hard to see because it's really small on here. Maybe it's like right there. So now the clip starts like right at this tree. So that's kind of the best way to use it, and it's something I use all the time. To talk about some of the others, let's see here. The other one I use is the rate stretch tool. And what that does, you can hit the R tool, this rate stretch. You can also click and hold here. There are other tools buried within here. So this is the rate stretch tool. And what I can do, if I have, let's say I wanted this on my timeline, and I want this clip, I want to speed it up or slow it down. I want to get it to fit exactly to the dimensions of like this clip here. And so if I hit that R tool, if I drag this over, what it's going to do is it's going to change the speed of it. See that percentage here to 179? So it automatically assumes what speed you're going to need to get it to fit there if you wanted to go faster and it needs to fit within a certain amount of time.
Mhm. That's a really good tool. I feel like I always forget about that one. I end up just changing the speed.
Yeah, like a lot of people, to change the speed, you would right click here and maybe you go, okay, let's try 200, see what that looks like. Oh, that's too short. You know, and you play with different numbers, so this
Right.
kind of eliminates the guessing. And you're like, okay, I need it to fit right there.
Yeah, that's perfect.
So a good tool to know about. Um, let's talk about something that I think is going to be really helpful as well. And this is also relatively new, but I actually just discovered it. I think it was brought into Premiere maybe about, I don't know, a year ago.
Ooh, I'm excited. I hope I might not even know this. Let's see.
All right, so we have a music clip here. Let's turn this down. So I'm going to turn both of these down by using that audio track mixer that we talked about. Audio on. Let's bring these way down. How's that sound on your guys' end?
That sounds pretty good.
Cool. So there is something called the Essential Audio Tools. So this is one full track. This is 2.5 minutes long. Most social media, you're going to want something much snappier, maybe 45 seconds. So you could come in here and listen to the song and try to cut everything. But the quickest solution, this is really cool. It doesn't work on every track, but it's great to try. If you go to Windows, Essential Sound. So this is going to bring up this window here so we can kind of see what's going on. Now, initially it's going to look like this. If you select this music track and you tell it, hey, it's music here, it's going to bring up this window. On here, there's these presets, and you can remix it to 30 seconds, 60 seconds, 90 seconds, which is really cool. The other thing you can do is you could just come in here and custom and say, hey, I want this to be not 2 minutes and 29. I want it to be 45 seconds. And let's just see what that does. And you can stretch it or you can remix it. In this case, I'm going shorter, so I want to remix it. And it's going to do its little clip analysis here.
Yeah, this up until about a year ago, this was only available in Adobe Audition. And I think you'd have to always like send it to Audition, create your sequences and remix it there, and then bring it back into Premiere. And when I found this out, I just was like, oh my God,
I lost
it's amazing.
it when I found this out.
I know.
Yeah, this is so perfect for someone who's just looking to get a quick social media video out, that it doesn't need to be, you know, absolutely perfect. So what this did was it analyzed that clip, and we can see here, it put these little squiggly lines. So that's the cuts it's making. Sometimes it works, sometimes it's off a little bit. If it is off, you can play with it. You can tell it, you know, I want fewer segments, or I want fewer variations or more variations. You can kind of tweak it a little bit and see how it comes out, but let's just hear this really quick. And I'm mostly going to focus on these sections where it did the transition. We'll see if it worked. And now we're down to a nice, perfect 41 seconds. So give or take. Yeah, give or take 5 seconds. So. Pretty flawless.
You would never, yeah.
Like nobody's gonna notice that, especially if you have other sound. And let's hear the. So I just took a song that's 2.5 minutes down to a perfect 45 seconds for my social edit, and it's ready to go.
Dude, I feel like there's still certain things with like Adobe Sensei and with things that happen inside of Premiere and After Effects that blow my mind. And Remix has been doing that for so long. And now that it's in Premiere, I want years of my life back from early days of editing. I know you know what I'm talking about.
It's so nice. Like I said, I lost my mind when I learned about this. I was like, this is so easy. Like, it makes social media edits just so much easier. Now, the other way to do that, instead of popping open this panel and everything, let's just close that for now. There is a tool over here. If you drop down and click on this, as I said, there's this remix tool here. So let's say you don't know the exact duration, or you're not, you know, hey, I want it to come to right where this green arrow is. You can actually, same thing as the rate tool, you can click and drag.
Oh my God, I didn't even know that.
and
Ah,
it's going to do its thing here. And all it does is it pops open the same window, and it's doing the effects here, but it's just another way to access it. That's pretty cool.
wow,
And that
that's
tool,
very
there is
cool.
no hotkey for it unless you program one, but it's kind of just buried in here, that remix tool.
Sweet. Very cool. Yeah, that I feel like I use this function a lot for even like very short Instagram reel versions. Let's say they're 10 seconds and under. And sometimes I've noticed it works. It certainly works, but it's so short that you don't get a chance to like listen to a certain part of the song. So it's just fun to play around with. And most of the time, 30 seconds and up, you're gonna be just golden with that remix.
Totally. So to move things along a little bit, the kind of big things I want to cover, just so we don't run out of time, are speed changes, like time remapping. That's a really common thing, and I do it
Cool.
all the time. And I also want to show you some like really basic color correction. And let's see. I don't know.
Awesome.
You guys in the chat, let me know what you wanna know about or what I'm missing, because we could spend all day talking about this. So
That's true.
I wanna keep that collaborative. So
Yeah, absolutely. We got about 20-ish minutes left. So you do your thing. And again, if anyone in the chat has things that they want Alex to touch on that he hasn't so far, other than speed, remapping and color, let us know.
all right, so let's close this panel here. And I think we can also close that. And again, see, this is exactly what I'm talking about for new people. Like, where's my program window? Like, where did it go? And it's tiny over here.
Yeah.
So if that happens again, you could just reset to save layout, and it's going to reset all your windows to how you had them or however you had it saved.
Rin was asking if you could show us how to create animation text. Rin, I think we're going to run out of time today, unless you want to hit on some of that.
I do want to touch on that. So we're gonna move things along like pretty quick.
Cool.
Let's see if we can do it. I do want to answer the questions that people have. So talking about time remapping really fast, because that is a common one. Let's go ahead and just let's come back here. Let's go ahead and make a new sequence really quick. I'm just going to use this moto clip as an example. I'm not going to worry about reframing it because I want you guys to actually see what's happening here. So this sequence, we're going to go back to the frame rate that I suggested you guys use at the beginning. Make sure it's 2997. This clip, however, was shot in... Oh, you know what? I know what's going on. That's not a good clip to use. It's already slowed.
Something in 60.
Yeah, you know what? I'll just show you guys what's going on here. So we have this clip here. See all these different marks here? If you click here, right click, sorry, on this little FX graphic, go to time remapping, select speed. Normally it'll be on opacity. So normally it'll look just like this. So if you come in here, right click, change it to speed. So I have some time remapping going on here, and all that is a fancy word for saying speed changes. So you can see it kind of ramps up really fast here, twirls down, and it's kind of some slow motion, then goes back up to full speed. There you go. So you can see that a little better. So all you're doing is using the pen tool. I'll show it on this clip since there's nothing going on here. You can click and drag this just like you would normally, but grab this pen tool here and you can just put little points here. It makes this this bar that you can drag if you want to smooth it out a bit. And then you can speed change your clip. Let's say we want to go up to, let's just really exaggerate it here. So it made my clip shorter, so I had to drag it back out, and then it goes really fast, and then we want to slow it back down. And we drag this over, and we're going to tell it to slow back down to like 100% or maybe even 50% if this is a shot in 60 frames per second, which it was.
Sweet. It's always a nice treat when you're like, oh, this isn't going to jitter.
Yeah. So yeah, you want to keep it. So if your sequence is in 30, you want your footage to be, 60 or faster, so you can get that that time remapping. So that's kind of a nice thing to know. A lot of people don't know about. A lot of people would maybe just come up here and speed duration and change it to 200, and then they're going to put a cut, and then we're going to go back to 100, and that gets super tedious.
And it's also not as smooth too. I feel like you have these really awkward like
you can
cuts of like fast to slow. Here you get that really nice, the ability to smooth those points out, so it seems a lot more seamless than if you just were doing hard speed cuts.
Now, the other thing too is a little hack that I like to sometimes use, depending on, in this instance, it's not going to work well. It's just drone audio. But if you had something like, say, a motorcycle clip and you slow it down, and the thing is with time remapping, it doesn't apply to the sound. So we make this go faster. You see, like, my soundtrack here is not changing at all. And let's say I drag that out to smooth it. Sometimes what I'll do is once I finish the visual side of it and I have my time remapping in there perfect, however I want it, what I will do is I'll actually come to the audio here and I'll look at what this is set to. So the speed, I went up to 212 and it was at 100. So maybe right in between here, and this isn't perfect, but it's a good little hack, I'll put a cut there, and then this is where I will go old school. And we're gonna crank this to 212. I'm gonna put a crossfade in there.
Oh, that's cool.
Maybe kind of match it with these. And then same thing here. I'm gonna put a cut relatively as inline, because now this clip is at 212, so it's accounting for that. But now we need to bring it back down to, what do we do here? 81%. And it's pretty close. It's off a few frames, but most people aren't going to notice that, especially if it's slow motion. If you just kind of want to hear maybe the tires rumbling or an engine and you want it to sync up a little better, because time remapping doesn't affect the sound, this is kind of a good workaround.
That's kind of a good point too, because it as nice as it is to add sound design to every one of those moments, it can become really tedious. So if you have some of that audio from the drone, or it's I guess a good idea to use what you have first.
Absolutely. Let's see, if we wanted to add text, let's go over that real quick, because I know that was asked in the chat, right? How to add some text.
Yeah, how to create text animation.
So the good thing to know really quick, if you come up to Window, go to Essential Graphics, and this has really gotten developed quite a bit over the last several years. You're going to see here this Essential Graphics window, and in here are what's called Mogurt files, and you can actually, there's a lot of free ones in here. Let's say if you wanted, say if you want a title here, you can actually click and drag this in onto your edit. And if you click here, it'll give you the option to change all this. Let's go ahead and just scale this whole thing up so you guys can see it. Oh, maybe that's just information on it. So here we have our title. So that's one way to do it. You can, I just want you guys to know that there are these free resources available in here that are built in. There's also, if you go to Adobe stock, I don't want you guys, unless you want to spend money, but you can check this free button here. And there's free ones that people have uploaded. And there's a lot of cool graphics and little things you can do in here that's pretty sweet to know about. But let's just, I just want you to know about that. Let's talk about making text from scratch and maybe animating it yourself. So I'm gonna just come to this text type tool, and I'll just click here, and it's gonna open up this Essential Graphics window, and here's my text and everything. You can change your fonts, all that sort of stuff. Let's just say FPV drone. And let's go ahead and maybe put that centered. Oh, here it is. You can center it in frame using these buttons. So let's say I want a dead center. And let's say maybe we want the color to be black. Nope, definitely not. But maybe we want a background that is black. And we can turn that up. Or maybe it's a shadow. So you can play around with the different things here. You can also come up here and make a new rectangle. color it however you want, and just position it however you want. I'll let you guys play around with that. I just kind of want to show the basics since we are a little short on time. So this is our text here. And let's say we want to animate it. So we want it to swipe from, there's a couple different ways here. You can animate it here. So let's say we want it to be in the middle, right here, and we want it to come from the other side. So we're going to just slide this over. And then it's going to move. And again, this is that keyframe that we were talking about from earlier. And we want it to hold here. Let's move this a bit. So we have off screen, and then at this point, it should be middle. And we want it to hold in that middle. So we're going to set another one without moving it. And then we want it to swipe back the other way. So right now it's going to be a little clunky, but that should be your basic animation. That's the concept. And maybe we want that to be a bit longer. So that hold spot, I'm just going to drag it out.
Yeah, and you mentioned you know, when we were going over keyframes earlier, like just the extension of a keyframe is that time. So if you're looking to speed something up, those keyframes are going to be shorter together. If you're looking to slow something down and you're like, where's the time? You're just dragging those keyframes further apart, right?
Exactly. So this here is just time. So boom, comes in, goes off. Sweet. Now, the one thing you'll notice here, another way to do this, if you wanted some motion blur, is you could come up here, and this is an effect I use a lot, transform. You could just put that on this clip. Let's take off what we just did on there. You could also just keyframe this same thing. Set one there, set one there. So traditionally, motion blur doesn't really exist in Premiere, but using this transform, you can actually go to the shutter angle here, and let's crank that to like 360. And now we'll get that nice motion blur going on here. So it's just another little thing to add, make it look a little smoother, a little neater. But the only way to get that motion blur, and this is just universal for all tricks in the program, you can get a quick motion blur from this shutter angle here.
Sweet. Yeah, that's a really, really great hack. I feel like I'll use that in different situations, like, you know, for transitions and things like that as an adjustment layer, but it's really cool to use it in text animations like that as well.
And then if you want to take it one step further, you could change, these are linear keyframes here. So if I toggle this down, you see it goes here, hard stop, doesn't move, moves again, hard stop. If you wanted to smooth this out a bit, you could change this temporal interpolation to ease in. We want to ease into it. So it just slows down as it comes into it, and it smooths it out a bit. And then this one would be easing out of this keyframe. And this is a little more like in the weeds, so I don't want to go too in depth, but just know that those options are there. It's very similar to After Effects and how you would do it there.
Awesome. Now, if you on that position before you Command Z, or yeah, Command Z that layer, can you show us how to just reset the parameters? Let's say you just wanted to scrap everything, and you're like, I just want to start. How do you reset it without pulling?
So you could do a full reset and just hit that's what this little button is here. You could also just reset for individual, gosh, what do you call these properties, I guess?
Sure.
So if I hit it here when it's keyframed, it's just going to set it right in the middle. But I could also turn off this animation and restart it. I could, and by doing that, it's going to give you this warning. This will delete the existing keyframes. Okay, or cancel. Yeah, so if there wasn't keyframes here, and let's say we had it over here, and I'm like, oh gosh, let's just reset everything. You could hit this button, and that's just gonna kind of set you back to the start. And again, you could do the same thing with position here.
Awesome. Man, little tips and tricks, Alex. I feel like I'm picking up on some stuff today too, and I hope everyone else in the chat is. I know we got a couple more minutes, and you wanted to try to squeeze in some color tips, but just keeping you
Yeah, maybe
solid on
we
time.
just do really fast because color is such an important thing. How do you do it? The
Sure.
best way to do it is um, Lumetri color. Use this effect here. And I like to make an adjustment layer, which is what I have going on here. To do that, you just come down here, make an adjustment layer. It's gonna make it to your screen size. Put it here, and you can drag this on top. And basically, this is a layer you could just turn on and turn off. And you can turn it on and turn it off by going to enable or disable. And I do like to do that just because it's easier to preview your changes. But we have that Lumetri color. I would pop open scopes, or we could actually come over here and go to color. So this color layer here, basically for color correction, your monitor might be off a little bit, but you want the main things you're going to be playing with here are kind of the whites, the blacks, and maybe your exposure. So you can adjust everything here. You can get creative with it. That'll be reflected over here. So this top bar is pure white. Anything above that is still just pure white, and 0 is pure black. And the way you read this, it looks intimidating, but it's literally this screen from left to right. So this is kind of all white, but like this here, this might be the top of this tree right here. And then this over here is kind of this side, darker side over here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the basics of it. Just know that it's here if you want to play with color. I would do it on an adjustment layer. You can also just put it directly on the clip as an effect. And then you can, you can adjust your exposure, all that sort of stuff. Add saturation. You can get creative with it. And again, this is all keyframeable as we talked about earlier. So you come in here, let's say we wanted it to be, and I think I did this actually in the edit. So it goes from like saturated and then maybe down to black and white, and you can keyframe it just by doing it that way.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah, and you actually see it reflected too in those scopes, which is just another good like representation of what's actually happening, in case you get confused when you're looking at that. I think this is probably a little bit more advanced and something that Alex, I'm sure you'll be back talking about color in more depth. But I know one thing that helps me is using that wrench tool there next to your clamp signal, and I end up having kind of like a different RGB, like more of like a brightness scope that works just for what I sort of see it as. So I do like a YC no chroma waveform and then a histogram sort of like next to each other. So I can I can just see like brightness, or I can just see and again, that's total preference, and that's most likely for maybe a bit of a more advanced lesson with you on here.
Totally. Yeah, and you can, everything in this program is customizable. There's so much more I definitely would love to go over. There's a lot to learn about a program in a short amount of time.
It really it really is endless.
Yeah, so I can continue, or I don't know where we're at on time.
You got about 5 minutes left. If you want to, the next 3 minutes, you have anything else that you want to show us? I think people have been just obviously super interested in the tips and tricks, and shortcuts they're always like just getting those little hacks. You feel like you just won a little bit. You're like, all right, cool. I know what I'm doing now. So
let's see here. Let's come back to my regular workspace. Real quick, I think some other big questions that are asked a lot. Let's just do this clip here, and I'm gonna just put this so you guys can see more purely for that. 220 by 1080, and set the frame size. So let's say we have this clip here. I'm gonna reset everything. So some of the most common effects, I just want to touch on these really quick. You guys can dive into them. Warp stabilizer. That's going to be something you're going to use a lot. So this warp stabilizer, it's not as good as a gimbal, but there's a lot of little shake you can take out. So here, if you just watch the trees, you can kind of see some shake going on a little bit. If it's a short clip like this, this might work pretty well. Put it on here. It's going to do its thing, analyzing the background. It's actually quite impressive what it does.
Yeah, it really,
so you can stabilize like maybe, yeah, maybe you're on your cell phone walking around. It'll get some weird stuff going on sometimes, but a lot of times it can do really well. The other tip there, this is going to take a minute, but if it's not working super well on a clip, a lot of times it's really helpful to take this smoothness and just turn it down like really low to like 2%. And it'll help get rid of like little tiny jitters without getting a whole bunch of warble and warp.
Yeah.
The longer the clip is, the more you're walking around vlogging or whatever you're doing, the less likely it is to work really well, because there's just so much data to process. But it's great for little short clips where you might just want to try to stabilize it a bit. So, oh boy.
That's surprising.
This is something I've been running in. So you run into issues. Let's try it with the proxy on.
Oh, cause sometimes it'll do that because of a proxy.
Yeah, I think because sometimes I have the proxies linked. It'll mostly because I changed some stuff earlier today with some other projects, and I think it caused some problems with this. But
gotcha.
I think we're not going to be able to see it here right now. But just know that Warp Stabilizer is here. It's a great tool to use, and sometimes you just turn the smoothness down to 2, it'll redo it, reanalyze it, and you can go through that. The other common thing, real quick, so you know about it, how do you crop it? Just use this crop effect.
Sweet.
And put that on, and that's it.
Right on, man. Oh, well, dude, thank you. Thank you so much. I could sit here and listen to you go over tips all day, and I'm sure we will chat plenty more about tips and tricks in Premiere, and I'm looking forward to hopefully having you back on here and back on Adobe Live. So yeah, thanks, Alex, for taking us through, just packed with information in the last hour and a half. So thank you.
So much to go over. Yeah, thanks, James. Thanks for everyone in the chat, everyone who watched. If you guys have questions, honestly, feel free to reach out to me on Instagram or anything. But
awesome. Yeah, please do. Please follow Alex on Instagram, his website. Your work's amazing, dude. So keep it up. And just before we wrap up, just some housekeeping. Stay tuned and join the first episode of Kyle's new Photoshop Basic series, where he'll share how to create a new document and navigate the essential tools every digital artist needs to begin working. And just use the resources here on Adobe Live, the YouTube channel. If you haven't subscribed, click the subscribe button, because there are amazing content from so many other creators just like Alex outside of Premiere Pro. And until next time, thank you for tuning in with us, and we'll see you later. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.